if you are a business owner and the only way you know how the week actually went is by asking 3 different people on Monday, then this video is for you, because right now, the health of your business is scattered across everybody's hands and it doesn't have like one single place to call home. Maybe sales know their numbers, operations know their numbers, whoever handles the money, they know a little bit. And you're the one who has to walk around and gather it all up just to figure out if things are okay or not. And not only is that exhausting, but it's also slow, because by the time you figured it all out and pieced it all together, then, whatever went wrong, it's like weeks ago, right? So today I want to talk about the weekly scorecard, which basically it's a single page that shows you the pulse of your entire business in about 5 minutes. And I'm going to explain how you can actually build one, because most business owners either don't have it at all, or they have giant spreadsheets with like 40 columns and like 100 rows that honestly nobody ever looks at. And if you do look at it, it's not really that useful, right? So let me start with what a scorecard actually is, because it's a pretty simple concept. It's basically just a handful of numbers that you track every single week, and they tell you whether the business is growing or not, or doing well or not. And that's it. It's not a report. It's not a giant spreadsheet. It's a small set of numbers that you look at once a week, usually on the same day, but you look at it every week, right? That's the key thing. You got to look at it every week. Most owners look at their numbers maybe on a monthly basis, if they look at all, right? But usually when the accountant sends something over. So by the time the month is over, you're already looking at basically ancient history. So you can't fix January in February. It's too late, right? So whether you're watching the important numbers every week, if you do that, you can catch the problem while it's still small, while you still can, pivot and do something about it. So the whole point of a weekly scorecard is speed. You keep your finger on the pulse, right? You see the trouble coming rather than like when it's already done and gone, and then you gotta like basically excavate it. So the biggest mistake that people make if they try to track everything, like they build a big dashboard with every number they can think of, and it might look impressive, and then nobody ever opens it, right? Because when everything is important, then really nothing is important. You don't know where to look at. It's too overwhelming, so it's just not, you just don't bother, right? So the real skill is about picking the few exact numbers that you really need to look at every week. So let's talk about how you pick those, right? In every business, there's really like 3 areas that your scorecard should have numbers from. The first area is like you bringing in new business, okay, sales. So that's your leads, your sales calls, new deals closed, your revenue for the week, that type of thing. The second area is delivering the work, right? Whatever tells you that the actual product or service is getting done well and on time. And then the third area is money. So cash in the bank, right? Money going out, whatever tells you that you're not about to run out of cash and hit a wall, that type of thing. So when you have a couple of numbers from each of those 3 areas, you're basically looking at the whole business and not just one slice of it. And it's very easy to see just on one page, right? So that's what we're going for. Now, let's have a look at a simple example. So let's say you run a business and you got 15 people. So on the bringing in side, you might track how many new leads came in this week, how many turned into sales, and maybe like total revenue. Then on the delivering side, you might track how many projects you finished this week, maybe how many are running late, that type of thing, right? And then on the money side, you might track cash in the bank, and maybe you're tracking your outstanding invoices so that, the money that people owe you and hasn't come in yet, you're tracking that, right? So maybe that's like, 7 to 10 numbers, and that's it. All on one page. You look at them once a week, and you basically know how your business is doing. So you don't need 40 numbers. You don't need like a giant spreadsheet. That's all you need, right? It's the big picture. Now, here's the part that makes the scorecard actually work that most people don't do. Every single number on that page needs one person who owns that number, right? It's not the team. It's not everybody. It's one specific person, and it's their job to report that number every week and to care when it's off, right? Like it's their number. They own it, right? Because if everybody owns it, then really nobody owns it, right? If revenue is down and it's just like floating out there as a company number, then everybody else assumes that like, well, somebody else is going to be handling it, right? But if that number has a name next to it, then when the number drops, that person notices, and then that person explains it, and that person has to do something about it, right? Obviously, you're going to support them and make sure that they're capable of doing it, but that's how it goes, right? And that's how the scorecard can change how your business runs, because once every number has an owner, then you stop being the one who has to be responsible for everything. And that's the whole point, right? Because if you're responsible for everything, you can't step away because you are basically the dashboard, right? The business runs through your eyes. But when the numbers are on a page and each one of them has an owner, then the picture lives in the business instead of in your head. So that's what we're going for, right? That's what lets you take a week off or a couple of weeks off without things going wrong, because the person who is responsible for the number can see basically in real time how that thing is doing, right? Now, let's talk about the goal part, because a number by itself doesn't, really tell you much. If you tell the business did 40 new leads this week, is that good or bad? Well, you don't know, right? I also don't know unless there's a target next to it. So every number on your scorecard, we already said, needs an owner, but it also needs a target, a number that you expect to hit each week, right? So now you got a goal. You don't just say, oh, we got 40 leads. Well, our target was 50. So now we're 10 short, right? So that's the magic. So like, you're not reading and analyzing, you're just glancing and you're seeing green or red, right? You hit the goal or you miss a goal, it's marked green or it's marked red, and that's it, right? So it's a very simple system. It's a traffic light system, and you put somebody else responsible for each of the numbers. So when you actually sit down to look at your scorecard each week, the job is super simple, right? You scan down the page, everything that hit the goal, you just skip because it's all green. You don't have to discuss it. It's fine. You leave it alone. And everything that missed, you can stop on, right? You can ask the person who has that number, like, what happened? Why is this red? And then you can decide what to do about it, and you can support them, right? And that's your whole weekly review right there. Like, you're not sitting through some long meetings where everybody reports on everything. No, you're just talking about the things that are off because, the things that are on don't really need you. Now, if you keep hitting green week after week in a certain area, then you probably start raising the target, right? That's a different conversation. So this is going to save you huge amounts of time, because it's one of those things that you can feel like immediately, right? Because before, your Monday is a bunch of separate conversations. You're trying to pull numbers out of people one at a time, and then you're trying to assemble the picture in your head, right? But afterwards, you've got one page, the numbers are already there, and you're spending your time only on the, 2 or 3 things that are yellow or red, and they need a decision, right? So the scorecard doesn't just show you the business, it actually protects your time, because it points your attention only at what's broken, right? And at the same time, it's going to empower your team members to make decisions and get things done without you. Now, here's a little warning, because there is a little trap on the other side. Once people fall in love with the scorecard, they want to add numbers to it, right? Somebody has a bad week and they say, okay, we should track this too. And now there's an 8th number and number 9 and 10. And all of a sudden you got like 20 numbers again, and it turns into this giant dashboard that nobody looks at, right? So we're back where we started. So you have to defend the size of it. A good rule is that, like, if you want to add a number, you have to consider taking one off. Like, keep it small on purpose, because the value of the scorecard is that you can take it in at a glance, right? That's the whole point. We're not doing like deep dives there. The moment it becomes too big to just have a look at and get a good idea where the business is going, it's not really working anymore, right? And one more thing about actually keeping this alive is that a scorecard only works if the numbers go in every single week on the same day without exception, because it's the trend, right? It's not any given week. You got to see how the trend went. Then you start seeing the story. You see that like leads have been slipping for 3 weeks straight, quietly a little bit each time. And none of those weeks alone looked alarming, but you look at the trend and it's basically screaming at you, right? And you'd never have caught it if you just had a single month-end report. So that slow slide is exactly the kind of thing that kills your growth, and it's exactly the kind of thing that the weekly scorecard can catch early. So if you take one thing from this, then you should not be the place where all the numbers live. Your business should have a single page that shows the health of the business with a handful of numbers, and each one is owned by a real person, and each one has a target goal, and it's updated every single week. And you don't have to build the perfect one on day one, right? You just start with the 5 or 6 numbers that would tell you the most about a week, and then you put them on one page, and then you assign an owner to each of those, and you give them a target, and then you look at it every Monday. That's it. And within a few weeks, you'll wonder how you ever ran your business without it, and you'll see which numbers make sense to keep, maybe which numbers you can add and instead of some other numbers and so on. But basically, it's going to become a very valuable tool on your weekly routine to run the business.